Welcome to day 42 of our Telangana history series. Today, we delve into one of the most intense political and constitutional crises in the history of Andhra Pradesh, the Mulki Rules crisis and the subsequent six-point formula, spanning the tumultuous years of 1971 to 1973. This lecture covers the constitutional battles, the regional agitations, and the final political settlement that permanently altered the administrative landscape of Telangana. Pause, let us begin. Chronology of the crisis. Before diving into details, let us trace the timeline of key events. In February 1972, the High Court full bench quashed the historic Mulki rules, declaring them unconstitutional. However, in October of that same year, the Supreme Court delivered a landmark judgment fully restoring and upholding these protective rules. This caused intense panic in the Andhra region, leading to widespread protests. By January 1973, Chief Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao resigned, and President's rule was imposed. Finally, in September 1973, the six-point formula was introduced as a definitive political compromise. Let us explore each milestone step by step. The Supreme Court verdict, 1972. On the 3rd of October, 1972, the Constitutional Bench of the Supreme Court delivered a historic verdict. The court ruled that the Mulki rules were indeed constitutionally valid, finding explicit protection under Article 35, Clause B, of the Indian Constitution. This landmark decision confirmed that the Nizam's old 15-year residency requirement for public employment in Telangana was legally enforceable. This judicial victory for Telangana immediately sparked panic among politicians and job seekers in the Andhra region, leading to a massive countermovement. The Jai Andhra agitation. In direct reaction to the Supreme Court's validation of the Mulki rules, leaders and student groups from the Andhra region launched a vigorous counter-agitation known as the Jai Andhra movement. They demanded the complete scrapping of local rules to ensure uniform job opportunities in the capital, Hyderabad. Alternatively, they demanded the immediate bifurcation of Andhra Pradesh if safeguards remained. Widespread strikes by non-gazetted officers and violent protests paralyzed the state administration. Consequently, Chief Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao resigned on January 18, 1973, marking the first time President's rule was imposed in the state's history. Failed five-point plan, 1972. To ease the tension before the administration collapsed, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi had proposed a five-point formula on November 27, 1972. This plan restricted the Mulki rules only to non-gazetted posts up to the Tahsildar level. In joint state offices like the Secretariat, it reserved only 1 out of 3 non-gazetted jobs for Telangana locals. It also set clear expiration dates for the Mulki rules, promising their complete removal by 1977 in Hyderabad and by 1980 in the rest of Telangana. Unsurprisingly, this compromise failed instantly, as it satisfied neither region. Direct rule from the center. With the resignation of P.V. Narasimha Rao, the central government stepped in to freeze the state's political volatility. President's rule was officially imposed on January 18, 1973, and lasted for 11 months. Direct control from New Delhi allowed the Union Home Ministry to bypass regional factions. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi and Governor H.C. Saran took executive command, subduing street violence and using this period of political pause to draft a centralized, top-down political compromise. The six-point formula. We now move to our next major section, the six-point formula. Announced in September 1973, this package served as the ultimate political compromise. While it restored immediate peace, it brought structural reforms that deeply impacted Telangana's long-term autonomy. Let us analyze its core provisions. Provisions of the plan. The six-point formula had 3 primary administrative pillars. First, it focused on backward development by establishing a state-level planning board and regional subcommittees to accelerate growth using earmarked funds. Second, it addressed education by instituting uniform local quotas in admissions and founding the Central University at Hyderabad to expand local options. Third, it localized public recruitment, prioritizing local candidates for non-gazetted jobs, local bodies, and specific gazetted posts. The structural safeguards. To ensure the implementation of these provisions, two major structural safeguards were introduced. First, a high-powered administrative tribunal was established to adjudicate public employment disputes, making its decisions binding on the state government and preventing prolonged court litigation. Second, the Parliament passed the 32nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1973, inserting Article 371D. This gave the President of India overriding powers to enforce these localized recruitment rules, securing them from future legal challenges. Constitutional safeguards. Let us compare how the regional safeguards evolved from the Gentleman's Agreement of 1956 to the Six-Point Formula of 1973. Under the original Gentleman's Agreement, the 15-year residency rule was protected for all posts. The 1973 formula abolished this, replacing it with localized service cadres. Furthermore, the historic Telangana Regional Committee was dissolved and replaced by a non-statutory state planning board. Educational quotas were formalized under direct presidential orders, and the entire framework received solid constitutional security via Article 371D. The loss of Telangana's voice. While the six-point formula brought political stability, it came at a devastating cost to Telangana's regional interests. The historic Mulki rules were permanently abolished, stripping locals of their centuries-old protection. Additionally, on December 10, 1973, the Telangana Regional Committee was dissolved. Without this legislative watchdog, Telangana lost its veto power over land transfers and budget allocations. This systematic dismantling suppressed regional aspirations, planting the seeds for the historic statehood movement decades later. Active Recall Study Deck. We will now begin the Active Recall Study Deck. This high-yield section features 15 questions and detailed solutions designed to test your knowledge of the 1971 to 1973 constitutional crisis. Let us proceed to the first question. Question 1. What was the original source of the Mulki rules, and what residency duration did they require to qualify as a local, or Mulki, in Hyderabad state? Pause, take a moment to think of the answer, and then proceed to the next slide. Here is the answer. The Mulki rules were originally codified in the Hyderabad Civil Service Regulations via an imperial decree, or firman, issued by the 7th Nizam, Mir Osman Ali Khan, on the 25th of Ramzan, 1337 Hijri, which corresponds to 1919 AD. Under this decree, a non-native had to establish a continuous, permanent residency of at least 15 years in the Hyderabad state to qualify as a Mulki and be eligible for state services. Question 2. Which article of the Constitution of India legally protected the pre-existing Mulki rules of Hyderabad state after its integration into the Indian Union? Pause, consider your answer before moving forward. Here is the answer. The pre-existing Mulki rules were protected under Article 35, Clause B, of the Constitution, which validated all laws in force immediately before the commencement of the Constitution. This was balanced with Article 16, Clause 3, which empowers the Parliament to prescribe residency requirements for employment within a state. Article 35, Clause B, ensured the old rules remained active until Parliament enacted new legislation. Question 3. Identify the landmark Supreme Court case decided on October 3, 1972, that declared the Mulki rules to be constitutionally valid. Pause. Think of the case name, then proceed. Here is the answer. The landmark verdict was delivered in the civil appeal case of Director of Public Instruction versus G. Narasimha Rao, and Director of Industries and Commerce versus Venkat Reddy. A 5-member constitutional bench of the Supreme Court set aside previous High Court judgments, ruling that the creation of Andhra Pradesh did not dissolve the regional safeguards originally established for Telangana under Article 35, Clause B. Question 4. What was the controversial ruling of the Andhra Pradesh High Court full bench in February 1972 that initially triggered the historic appeal to the Supreme Court? Pause, recall the ruling and proceed. Here is the answer. The full bench of the High Court ruled that the Mulki rules were constitutionally invalid after the formation of Andhra Pradesh. The High Court argued that once Telangana merged with Andhra, residence within a specific part of a state could not be used as an exclusive qualification. This ruling nullified all job reservations for locals, causing massive panic and leading to the Supreme Court appeal. Question 5. Who served as the influential president of the Telangana Non-Gazetted Officers Union, or TNGOs, during the critical peak of the Mulki Rules legal battles in 1972? Pause, think of the leader, then proceed. Here is the answer. The president of the TNGOs during this peak struggle was K. Ramakrishna Reddy. Under his leadership, the Telangana Employees Union successfully mobilized documentation, legally challenged hostile state orders, and actively defended regional safeguards before the central government. Question 6. What major socio-political movement erupted in the non-Telangana districts of Andhra Pradesh immediately following the Supreme Court's October 1972 judgment? Quote, here is the answer. The Supreme Court's verdict outraged leaders and students in the coastal Andhra and Rayalaseema regions, triggering the Jai Andhra movement. Fearing that their youth would be locked out of government jobs in the capital city of Hyderabad, protesters demanded the immediate and unconditional bifurcation of Andhra Pradesh if local rules were maintained. Question 7. What did Prime Minister Indira Gandhi propose on November 27, 1972, to pacify the two opposing regional movements? Here is the answer. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi proposed the 5-point formula. It restricted the Mulki rules only to non-gazetted posts up to the Tahsildar level, allocated a 1:3 ratio for Telangana locals in central offices, and set clear deadlines for the complete phase-out of Mulki rules, by December 1977 in Hyderabad and December 1980 in the rest of Telangana. Question 8. Why was the 5-point formula of 1972 rejected by both the Andhra and Telangana stakeholders? Here is the answer. The plan was rejected by both sides for opposite reasons. Telangana employees felt betrayed because the formula withdrew safeguards for higher-level gazetted officers and set a near-term expiration date. Andhra leaders rejected the plan because it kept the residency rules alive in Hyderabad, demanding the immediate deletion of all local rules. Question 9. Who was forced to resign as the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh on January 18, 1973, due to the intense Jai Andhra agitation? Here is the answer. Chief Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao was forced to submit his resignation on January 18, 1973. As an ardent supporter of land reforms and regional safeguards, he faced severe political rebellion from dominant landlords and Andhra politicians who backed the anti-Mulki protests, leading to the collapse of his cabinet. Question 10. What administrative measure was taken by the Union government following the resignation of the Chief Minister in January 1973? Here is the answer. The central government imposed President's rule under Article 356 of the Constitution. This was the first time direct central control was utilized in the history of Andhra Pradesh. It suspended the state assembly, allowing the Union Home Ministry to bypass state factions and draft a final compromise package in a controlled environment. Question 11. When was the famous 6-point formula officially announced by the Union government as a permanent political settlement? Here is the answer. The 6-point formula was formally unveiled by the central government on September 21, 1973. It acted as a political pact to end both the separationist movements and reinforce a united state structure, but it did so by explicitly abolishing both the historic Mulki rules and the Telangana Regional Committee. Question 12. Which constitutional amendment legally sanctioned the 6-point formula, and which article did it insert into the Indian Constitution? Here is the answer. To insulate the 6-point formula from further judicial challenges, Parliament enacted the 32nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1973. This amendment inserted Article 371D into the Constitution, granting the President of India sweeping, overriding powers to organize public employment and educational opportunities in Andhra Pradesh. Question 13. When was the historic Telangana Regional Committee dissolved, and what replaced its development role under the 1973 formula? Here is the answer. The Telangana Regional Committee was officially dissolved on January 1, 1974, by a presidential order. It was replaced by non-statutory, state-level planning boards. This represented a major institutional loss for Telangana, leaving the region without its constitutional watchdog and silencing its legislative veto. Question 14. What mechanism was created under the 6-point formula to handle public sector employment disputes, bypassing standard judicial litigation? Here is the answer. The 6-point formula established the Andhra Pradesh Administrative Tribunal, or APAT. This specialized body held exclusive jurisdiction to resolve all service disputes of public servants. High court jurisdiction over these matters was removed to prevent continuous legal bottlenecks from freezing government appointments. Question 15. How did the 6-point formula systematically dilute the original residency criteria of the Mulki rules to qualify as a local candidate? Pause, think of the change in years and structure, then proceed to the final slide. Here is the answer. Under the 1975 presidential order implementing the formula, the local residency requirement was drastically reduced from the Nizam's historic 15 years to a mere 4 consecutive years of study prior to the qualifying exam. Furthermore, it split the state into 6 administrative zones, localizing recruitment to specific districts rather than a unified regional pool. This concludes our study of the Mulki rules crisis and the 6-point formula. Thank you for listening.